I can't take credit for breaking Metallica. What I can take credit for is being one of the first people to ever play Metallica on the radio in America. And the story in a nutshell is that the guy who started Megaforce Records, Metallica's first label, his name is John Zazula. He and I knew each other. I was a kid. I would go to a record store that he had in a flea market, and I would always buy import albums from him. And he was a guy that very much had his pulse on metal at the time. And when I would go to the store, he would always be saying, try this, buy this. And a lot of times I did. And then I started doing a metal radio show in New Jersey right out of high school. And I went to, when I started doing that show, John would then give me records without paying for them at the record store, because he knew that if I went and played them on my radio show, people would then come in his store and buy them. And no one else was playing that sort of music, whether it was Raven or Manowar or whatever. So one day he literally physically came to the radio station I was working at. I'd only been there a couple months. It was my first time on the radio. I was doing a weekend metal show, and he physically came there. And I was stunned to see him at the door. I was like, what are you doing here, man? And he's like, I got to come in. And remember, this is early 80s. I mean, it's not how radio is now, where it's automated and you can walk away and hit a computer and walk away for half an hour. You have to, I'm playing vinyl. This was before CDs. You have to physically queue up vinyl and be there for when the record ends and start the next record. You have to be pretty on it on live radio doing that. But that's how it was then. And I was like, Johnny, I got to really focus on what I'm doing, man. You can't be in here. What are you doing? He had a record under his arm, and he insisted that before he left, I play this record. I was like, just leave it here, man. I'll check it out, and I'll let you know. And he goes, no, I need to hear it on the radio. I need you to play it right now. And that was Metallica's Kill 'Em All. And he explained to me that he couldn't get anybody to even understand the band and give it a chance. He had to show the band that he could get something going. And he said, can you please just play this so I can say it was played on the radio? So I did. I played Jump in the Fire. And I didn't know. I'd say this all the time, Daniel. I would love to say to people, I heard the future, I didn't know what I heard. I never heard any music like that before. It was like way more extreme than anything I ever knew. And I was just like, John, I don't know what's going to happen with this band, man. That's crazy sounding, but good luck and whatever. And he took the record and he signed it to me. And he wrote, Ed, you were the first, John Z, and handed it back to me. I still have it.
That's awesome.
As he walked out, he said, if I can ever get this band to happen, and thus his label would happen because it was on his label, he said, I'm going to hire you as a thank you as my first employee. Yeah, go ahead. He leaves, flash forward a couple years, Metallica breaks, moves to Elektra. He gets an influx of money for the deal because he owned Metallica for management and label, so there was a big settlement. Metallica goes their own way. He calls me, good to his word, and hired me to work for Megaforce Records, and that's how I began my career in the label side. So Metallica was indirectly responsible for me working for a record label, and I played a role without them even knowing it of getting the ball rolling for them. And when Metallica went in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, they invited people that they felt were important to their career, friends and family, to the event and to a party the night before. And I was lucky enough to have been invited. And they were asking people to come up on the stage and tell stories about their connection to Metallica at the party the night before. And they asked me to go up and tell a story. And I told the story I just told you in front of Metallica and their friends at this pre-Rock and Roll Hall of Fame party. And the guys at Metallica had no idea. Like, they didn't realize that had all happened. And they were like, wow, we didn't really ever realize and put that together. Because Metallica has a lot of really strong roots in New Jersey because of Johnny, because he was based there. And I actually saw the last show Dave Mustaine played with Metallica and the first with Kirk Hammett because they both happened close to my house.
Kill 'Em All is Metallica's debut studio record. It was recorded from May 10th, 27th, 1983 in Rochester, New York, and was released on July 25th, 1983 by Megaforce Records. Megaforce is an independent record label which was founded by Johnny Zazula and his wife Marcia Zazula in 1982. As a matter of fact, John and Marcia Zazula founded Megaforce Records specifically in order to publish Metallica. In the early years, record labels were not very interested in Metallica. John Zazula, however, saw something in the band. On July 6, 1982, Metallica recorded their now famous demo tape called No Life Till Leather, which helped create a buzz for Metallica in the underground tape trading scene. No Life Till Leather features 7 songs, all of which would be re-recorded for Kill 'Em All: Hit the Lights, The Mechanics, Motor Breath, Seek and Destroy, Metal Militia, Jump in the Fire, and Phantom Lord. In the early 80s, John Zazula was a record store owner in New Jersey who also promoted metal bands on the US East Coast. He was introduced to Metallica via a 10-song cassette tape which featured live performances of the 7 songs on Metallica's No Life Till Leather demo, as well as 3 other songs. Music journalist Mick Wall states the following: "At the time he heard his first Metallica recordings, a 10-track bootleg cassette of one of Ron McGovney's last shows at the Mobway Gardens in November, Johnny was then running a record and tape stall named Rock and Roll Heaven in a flea market near his and Marsha's home in Old Bridge, New Jersey. Offered a copy of the cassette by a regular customer who insisted he play it immediately. The Mobway tape consisted of live versions of the 7-track No Life Till Leather demo, plus the newer No Remorse and Whiplash, and the inevitable Diamond Head cover Am I Evil? I was blown away. I wanted to find out where I could find these guys. They seemed like America's antidote to the new wave of British heavy metal. After getting in touch with Metallica via telephone, the only concrete proposal Johnny had for them at that point was the suggestion they might like to open up at some of the shows he and Marcia had recently begun promoting locally, featuring the sorts of artists his regular customers at Rock and Roll Heaven were interested in seeing. John and Marcia were able to scrape together $1,500 to send to the band so they could hire a U-Haul truck and make the cross-country road trip from San Francisco to New Jersey. They showed up a week later, a bunch of drunken teenagers suddenly arriving on their doorstep. They come and land right on my front lawn. Basically, me penniless, them penniless, and we're going, how are we going to do this? The final cost for recording Kill 'Em All was approximately $15,000, which almost caused John Zazula to go bankrupt. That's how big of a risk he was willing to take on Metallica. Were it not for the Zazulas, Metallica may have not gotten to where they are today.
Well, yeah, I mean, he was the guy without a doubt. I mean, Johnny had his pulse on a lot of stuff. He was very much at the grass levels of the metal scene. He had his pulse on what was going on in Europe. He fought like hell for Metallica to get that going. The stuff that he did get involved with, man, when he got involved with it, he was all in. If he was on Metallica at that time, it's all about Metallica. I mean, for me, Metallica, by the time I started working for him, Metallica had left. So all I did with Metallica was the first ever CD reissues of Kill 'Em All, Kill 'Em All and Ride the Lightning. The initial versions of those on CD I put together. I actually have a credit on them if you have the Megaforce versions of them. But the band and their business was gone from Megaforce at that time. They had already moved on to Elektra and to Q Prime Management. So when I came in, I was working on a lot of different things. And Johnny at that time, he was consumed with Anthrax, because that was the band after Metallica had left him that was of that genre.
So as Eddie mentioned, John Zazula also managed Anthrax, and in September of 1986, when Cliff Burton passed away, Anthrax was on tour with Metallica. I made a separate video about Cliff Burton's death and Metallica's reaction to it. I want to show you a quick clip from that video where Eddie Trunk discusses John Zazula's reaction to getting the news of Cliff Burton's passing. How did you hear about Cliff Burton's passing?
At that time, I certainly liked and appreciated and respected Metallica, but I was still trying to figure them out, sort of, because it was so much more extreme than the music I listened to. And again, you got to keep that in the place and time. Back in the early 80s, nobody heard anything like Metallica. Now Metallica's mainstream commercially successful band. Back then, they were this underground metal thing. Nobody heard anybody play that fast or what the hell they were doing. So I really didn't completely process Metallica until more into Master of Puppets, and in that zone is where I really started to kind of understand what they were doing, and my ear warmed up to liking them. Of course, now I love them. So I didn't know Cliff, and I didn't have a lot of any real experiences with him that I can recall. But I did learn of his death because I was working at Megaforce, which, when I say working for that record label, we were at the time were working out of Johnny's house. I mean, it was a shoestring operation. We were working out of his garage. And I just remember being in my space, because I didn't even have an office, in my space in the garage, and the phone ringing, and because John sat right next to me, and I just remember the look on his face and him tearing, and I just didn't know what happened. And I thought maybe one of his family members died or something. It was that kind of heaviness. It turned out that he had gotten the call from Europe about the accident, and that Cliff was gone, because I believe Anthrax was on tour with them at that time, although not in the same vehicle. Yeah, John managed Anthrax, so they would have called and said, hey, or somebody from the tour called, even though Johnny was not working with Metallica anymore on any level. There was obviously a huge history there. And he was, and then went right through the house. I mean, his wife and everybody just devastated and crying like they lost a family member, which they felt like they did.
If you guys like this video, make sure to subscribe for more. Everything on this channel is completely original. I'm the one doing all the videos and all the editing. So if you guys like what you see and you want to support me, the best way to do so is honestly just to subscribe. Thanks for watching.